Great. Can everyone see the slides? All right, we're going to talk primarily about online and cell phone safety, and I'm going to go quickly because I want to honor our time and make sure that we have time for questions. If there are things that I bring up that make you have a question, just feel free to stop and interrupt me. The Jacob Wetterling Resource Center is an agency in St. Paul. We work to prevent abuse and abduction of children. 80% of the work that we do is prevention, and 20% of the work that we do is helpline. We have a 1-800 number, 1-800-325-HOPE. It's on all of our brochures. If you ever have a question, you can call that number. If you're calling after hours, just press 9, and they'll patch you through to whoever is on call. One of the things that we believe with internet safety is that the more afraid we are, the harder it is to make wise decisions. And so we never want to scare kids to death. We want to give them enough information so that they're moved to act to help keep themselves safe. And the way that I like to describe it is I say the internet and the cell phone is a tool, just like a car is a tool. And as a parent, you don't have to understand every dynamic of how a car works to be able to set limits about the car. You know, you don't have to understand the difference between how an automatic versus a stick versus, you know, to be able to say the car needs to be in the driveway by 9 p.m. and we don't text and drive, you know. And so one of the issues with internet safety is it keeps adapting. You know, the first social media piece that was a website called Friendster. And people would be friends with each other on Friendster. And then as soon as adults started using Friendster, then the kids started using MySpace. And as soon as adults started using MySpace, kids started using Facebook. And as soon as adults started using Facebook, kids moved to Twitter. And it's just this ongoing piece of wherever the adults are, they're going to look for the next best thing. And so it isn't always about knowing the difference of every website, but it's about setting limits. You know, the difference is with a car in our society, you have to have a driver's license. You have to go through the classes. You have to show you know that you're responsible. You have to have people watching to make sure you know what you're doing. I was in an airport recently, and there's a 2-year-old just reading themselves a book on the iPad, you know, and so for them, technology is their first language. There is no test. There is no, do you know what you're doing? But we want to make sure that we don't ignore the fact that it's not the car that's the problem. It's whoever's behind the wheel. So it's not the tool that's the issue. It's who's using it. Just like we would not give a small child a blowtorch and say, go explore and see how it works and report back. They're going to hurt themselves. They're going to hurt other people. So anytime we give young people a tool, we want to give them limits and boundaries. The internet itself isn't a bad thing. And I don't want anyone to go home and throw their computer out of the window because they think it's a bad thing. It's not the internet itself. It's how we use it. And most teenagers say they get their information about how to use the internet safely from their parents. So the fact that you're here and getting this information and helping have these conversations with them is huge when it comes to where they're getting their information. There isn't any school that's required to teach internet safety in Minnesota. Different districts do different pieces of netiquette and cyber citizenship, but a lot of it is coming from home. So when we started at the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center, we worked on preventing abductions. And then more and more of the abductors were using the internet to build those relationships. I tell the kids, I say, I didn't get my first email account till my senior year of high school. And the high schoolers are like, wow, your parents are strict. I was like, no, that's when it was invented. But thank you for making me feel silly about that. But yeah, it is that sense of, you know, I grew up with brothers, and we had one email account for my family. And you'd put whoever it was to in the subject line, and that's what we had. And then in college, I had my first all-by-myself email account. You know, and I tell that to the kids today, and they're like, oh, my gosh, sharing with your brothers, that's horrible, you know. But it's that idea about the internet has moved faster than we have been able to catch up when it comes to how do we parent, how do we create safe spaces online. So we believe that all personal safety is connected. We know 11 to 17-year-olds are the most at risk. Why do you think the Department of Justice tells us 11 to 17-year-olds are the most at risk to be the victim of crime? Why do you think 11 to 17-year-olds are targeted so often as crime victims? They're trusting? Trusting. And there's like 20 right answers. So trusting is one. What else about 11 to 17? Naive? Vulnerable? Curious? They want attention, you know, their peer pressure.
You can also go opposite with that, and that they don't have enough guidance.
It's like when your child is 4, you know exactly whose house they're playing at and for how long. When they're 15 and they come home, where were you tonight? Whose house were you at? So they might not have that same oversight as they get older. Any other ideas about why 11 to 17-year-olds are so at risk? Who here wants to relive junior high? Anyone? I had one parent today at my afternoon session who said they'd want to. Is there anyone here who would want to redo junior high? You wouldn't mind it? So yeah, some people wouldn't mind it. Some people you couldn't pay enough to do that again. It's a hard time. We know most victimized population in the United States is that age. We know most of our kidnappings are with kids who are 12 to 17. And we know that they represent about 1/4 of the people who are victimized in our country. Part of it is hormones, you know, and their body is interested in things and wants to, and, you know, even just taking risks. Their body is primed to take risks during those years and to sort of see how it figures itself out. The other thing is the brain is not done yet. The brain finishes developing around the age of 22. And it starts basically towards the back and moves towards the front. And the part of the brain, the frontal lobe, is the last thing to get developed. And that's the part of the brain that says, if I do this today, how's this going to impact me in 2 weeks? You know, we give kids cell phones, and they're taking sexual pictures of themselves and forwarding it on. The part of their brain that says, how might this be a problem 2 weeks from now, isn't done yet. I was with some high school students recently, and I had them fill out evaluations when it was done, and it said, what did you learn? And one of the boys wrote, I learned to listen to my smart gut and ignore my stupid brain. I was like, well, that's not exactly how I said it. You know, I didn't call your brain stupid, but it is the thing that the part of the teenager brain that's learning how to argue is what is tuned in. The part of the brain that's forming arguments, when you said curfew was at 9, I thought that's when I was with Jordan, but then I switched, started hanging out with Nate, curfew should be at 10. That's the part of their brain that's working really hard during 11 to 17. And if we know that one of the best ways to keep kids and teens safe is for them to listen to their gut instinct, those years is when their brain contradicts the gut. You know, we tell kids, if you see something that gives you that gut instinct, uh-oh feeling, or if you're spending time with someone who's giving you that gut instinct, uh-oh feeling, you know, respond to that. The difference is teenagers will use their logic to contradict their gut. You know, if you think of a gazelle lapping water by a stream, and a gazelle sees a rustle in the trees and something coming towards it, what does a gazelle do? Runs. A small child sees a rustle in the trees and something coming towards it, where's the person taking care of me? A teenager will say, if I get up and leave, everyone will think I'm overreacting. Everyone will wonder why I'm doing this. I'm going to go walk up to the tree and stick my head inside the tree, and when I figure out what it is that's freaking me out, then I'm going to leave. And so part of it is saying your gut is smarter than your brain in these years. And if your gut is telling you one thing and your brain is arguing with it, find an adult whose gut and brain are done and ask for advice. And that's hard, but it's important. There's a great book by Dr. David Walsh about the teenage brain called Why Do They Act That Way? And it's on our recommended reading. But it talks about the fact that young people's brain is geared to make mistakes. I mean, the difference is my mistakes from age 11 to 17, there's no online history of them. You know, it's history up here of, oh, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I said that. Oh, you know, and sometimes you can actually put yourself in those situations and be like, oh, no, I can't believe that I did that. But now they're having the record of, today was horrible, this is what happened, I can't believe I did that. You know, that they're creating, and so they don't have the impulse control of adults. And so we need to help them figure out how to do that. So we know that we're working against their biology in talking about internet safety, but it's so important that we begin these conversations. We started, the very first safety rule we said is we don't put pictures on the internet you'd feel uncomfortable seeing on a billboard on the highway. I mean, just very basic. If you're going to put a picture online, if you'd feel uncomfortable seeing it on the billboard on the highway, don't put it online. Because it's really like the information highway. And then we moved on to the next rule, which was we keep our passwords private and we change them frequently. Because junior high friendships might not last forever. person you're best friends with on a Monday, by Friday you never want to see again, and then Monday you're back to being best friends again during these years. I had a 5th grader and her parents call and approach us because the 5th grader had given her friend her password. And then they got into a fight, and the friend went on to eBay and bought a boat with her friend's email and password. So she gets this email being like, congratulations, you're the proud owner of a boat. And the 5th grader's like, oh, I gave my friend my password and she's mad at me and look what she did. You know, so the parents then are connecting with eBay and the listing and getting it redone. My friend Naomi, who does internet safety training, she likes to say that our passwords are like our underwear. We change them all the time. We don't share them with other people. And that's really important because sometimes during these years, it's like, oh, just give me your password. And I'll use your email account. And then we get into things that we're not even creating, but looks like it comes from us. So the only person who should have your email password is your parent in case of an emergency. But no one outside of that should have your email password. And so what have you told kids to avoid, or what would you tell kids to avoid if they're at an age where they had a social media profile page? Whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it might be, what should they not put online? What are examples of personal information not to share? Where they live, so street address. Telephone number.
If they're ever at home or on vacation.
Where they are. So many kids, I'm going to Disney World for 2 weeks, see you when I get back. AKA the check-in, yep. You know, AKA my house is open for 2 weeks. The check-in on Facebook and on Foursquare, you know, right now I'm at Chuck E. Cheese at my cousin's party. Now I'm at swimming practice. Now I'm back at school. We tell teenagers it's okay to have an air of mystery about you. That's kind of a cool thing. But if you do feel the need to check in to where you've been, do it as you're leaving. Not when you get there. I'm at Chuck E. Cheese right now and I'm be here for 3 hours. You're telling people my house, no one is there for 3 hours. Or if someone's trying to find you, where to find you. It's okay to have an air of mystery. If you really want people to know you're at Chuck E. Cheese, wait till you're leaving. So yes, phone number, address, exact location, sort of schedules. Any other things that we should avoid putting online? Your school?
I don't necessarily put it online, but I always tell my daughter that don't accept a friend's request if you don't know that person.
Don't accept friends' requests from people you don't know. I mean, the rule that I say is if they were to knock on my front door and I would let them into my house, then I will let them be my friend. But if they knocked on my door and I don't know them well enough to let them into my home, I'm not going to let them into my online life. That's for kids who are more literal. But yeah. And to go through their friends every so often. Do I know this you know, who's this? Oh, she sits next to me in math. Okay. Who's that? Oh, he's someone who I play soccer with. Great. Who's that? Oh, he's the guy who gives me my ice skates at the skating rink. What else do we know about him? Well, I don't know. He's in his 20s. He gives me my ice skates. I was skating. He was chatting. He's added me as a friend. Like, whoa, let's talk about that. Why that might not be a good, you know. So going through the friends list and making sure, just like you know who their friends are in real life. I had a little boy recently. I was asking them what to not put. And he's like, don't put your garage code online. I did that, and my dad got so mad at me. So don't put your garage code online either. But yeah, we talked about a lot of these. We don't want to put our birth year online, the year that we were born, for identity theft purposes. People take that for credit to apply for credit cards and things. Yeah, I mean, but a lot of it, we have to remember, just like when we're teaching our personal safety classes, it's not about stranger danger online, because we don't teach that at all, because in most cases of abuse, most cases of abduction, it's someone the child knows. So the 2 rules that we say are, do they make your gut instinct go off? And are they trying to get you to break your safety rule? Any person who's trying to get you to break a family safety rule, come and tell me about it. Because most of the people who are going to be the issue are going to be people the child knows. And it's the same thing online. Most of the people online who are engaging with the child are people who the child perceives as friends. They may never have met them in real life, but they perceive this person as a friend. And so we say, it doesn't matter how you know them. If they're doing something online that's asking you to break one of our safety rules, you need to tell me about it. Teenagers tell us the #1 reason they don't talk about internet problems with their parents is they're worried their internet will be taken away if they tell. So to set a standard above that says, okay, if something happens, come and tell me. I'm not going to pull access away if you're the one who's being targeted. I'm going to help you, and that will be our commitment. Because the kids say, oh, I don't want to tell because if my parents knew what was being said about me online, they'd take my phone away. Or if they knew what was being sent to me, that I couldn't have an email account. So to set the tone and say, if something happens and you're being targeted, let me know. I won't pull the internet away, but we're going to take steps to make you safe online. So any questions about any of those? But remember, it's not about who the child knows and doesn't know online. It's how is this person acting. An example, one of the boys in my youth group was playing a video game on one of the video game systems where you chat with other people as you play. And he got up to like level 10 very quickly. And someone in the video game room said, wow, you're really good at video games. Can you give me your street address and your name, and I'll send you a copy of our next game, and you can test it out and let us know how it's going because you're doing so well. And then, you know, you can help us develop this video game. You know? Yeah, I know. He's 15, and he's like, you know, gut, brain. Gut says this seems too good to be true. Brain says this sounds awesome. He's like, So he asked his dad. He's like, I don't know. You know, my gut and my brain are saying different things. And his dad said, let me talk to the person. You know, Dad asked him a few questions and was able to determine that this absolutely was not the hope, you know, of the free game. So to get other people involved is not a bad thing. And that goes against teenager biology, which is why it's important to say, you know, if something seems weird online or too good to be true, it could be a virus, it could be, you know, you have won $10 million, you know, we need to make sure that we're smarter than the people online. And not only is it about personal traps on the internet, it's far more about the emotional traps. When it comes to sharing our emotions online, that's far more of a risky behavior. And one of the things that we say is if you are feeling like this is something that you wouldn't want to talk to people in your homeroom class about, it probably shouldn't be something that you type online. And that's that emotional piece that's so hard, because even adults, if we get all riled up, someone just cut me off in traffic, I'm going to tweet about it, and then, or you know, write something, and then a friend's going to be like, I can't believe that happened either, and you know, we sort of build on each other. And we're used to that instant gratification of being right when we write something online. But it's the emotional information that can be the biggest issue, because what the online offenders are looking for is someone who they can use attention and affection to get them to feel like it's a relationship. No one loves you, but I love you. No one cares about you, but I care about you. No one reads your internet poetry, but I read every word and understand every line of it. That's the trap. And so these are two of the offenders who were arrested for soliciting young women online, Terry and Scott. Their victims were 14 and 13 at the time. They both used those emotional traps. And things like, I will love you if you send this to me. No one cares about you, but I do. You will get in just as much trouble if you tell about the secret relationship that we're having. And they'll try to get the kid to feel like it's their fault. And so what we have to talk about is we say every kid should have 5 grown-ups in their life as a safety net that they can talk to if they're having a problem online or a problem with a relationship or a problem with their body or whatever it is. Because sometimes the kid doesn't want to talk to their parent for whatever reason. And having that safety net of 5, and we tell the teenagers, adults who really care about you would never expect or accept sex in return for your love. Adults who really care about you would never expect or accept sex in return for your love. And it's that idea about having those 5 adults as a safety net. Because some of the literature will say stuff like, if your kid starts slamming doors and starts to have difficulty concentrating and things like that, it means they've been abused. Or it could mean they turned 14, you know? And so to say, well, you're not engaging with me, things are weird right now. You know, Uncle Ed is one of the 5 adults on your 5 trusted adults list. Why don't you and Uncle Ed go and have dinner so that he can connect with you what's going on and he can fill me in on the stuff that's important. But just so you know, you have a wide variety of people who want to keep you safe. And when I go in to ask 4- and 5-year-olds who their 5 trusted adults are, I have 10. I have 15 adults. I have 20. You know, they're trying to outdo each other. And I go into the junior highs and I say, who are your 5 adults if you had a problem online or a problem with a friendship or a relationship? And the junior high kids are like, oh, really? An adult? Oh, you know, and they really have to think about it. But that's the age where it's so important, because this is when these offenders are coming in and saying, no one cares about you, but I do. And if they have adults showing them positive attention and affection, their red flag goes up. Now, we know most kids don't tell if someone is sexually abusing them. What are some of the reasons that kids don't tell? Shame, they feel like they did something wrong. They're embarrassed, they're scared. They've been threatened that it's just as much your fault as my fault. We're going to get you into trouble. Retaliation, what's this person going to do if I tell? Often they really love the person. You know, it's a relative, it's a close family friend, and if they tell about the abuse, what's that going to do to the family dynamic? You know, if it's mom's boyfriend or dad's girlfriend or whatever partner combination it is, how is that going to affect the family if I talk about it? They're worried they won't be believed. So to have these conversations ahead of time saying, you know what, most adults want you to be safe and strong. But there are some people out there who do try to trick kids and make them do stuff they don't want to do. If that happens, it's never, ever, 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 ever your fault. And if you can tell me, I'll help you. So sort of set that tone before there's even a situation so that that young person knows that they can come and talk to you. But most kids don't disclose because these guys are really good at what they do. They don't just groom the child, they groom the family, and they groom the community. The gentleman on the top here, Terry, he met the child originally at church and then would text and email and things like that. This was an Amber Alert case because when he took the 14-year-old and went on the run, it turned out that he had served time for attempted murder. And the parents had no idea, because when someone comes into your faith community, you don't ask them what their background check is. And sometimes people have a sense in their faith community that people who make the choice to come to the faith community are automatically safe. And we know 90% of sex offenders say they're religious. So we don't want to take our guard down in our faith community. It's great to have different adults involved in your child's life to help build up that healthy and safe child. But just because somebody's going to your faith community doesn't mean that they have good intentions. We still want to be watching for behavior. Not relationship, but how do they act? How do they make me feel? Not how do I know them?
Like when they're interviewed, they say they're religious. Is that what you mean with that?
In prison, yes. They did an interview of sex offenders in prison, and 90% consider themselves to be religious. But that's an easy community for them to get, why do sex offenders choose to go to church? Well, I mean, to be a parishioner, lots of kids, easy to find yourself in a position of power and authority. I mean, I was a youth minister for years, and if someone says, I would love to teach Vacation Bible School, it's like, oh, thank you. We need 8 teachers. Thank you so much, And so it's important that volunteers in faith communities are also screened, are also trained, and that you go 2 by 2. You always have 2 adults in a group with kids, just like in Scouts. Yep, 2 deep leadership is so important. Yes? And I talk really fast, I'm sorry. Okay.
But I mean, how do you begin then to distinguish between the ones that really are good and the ones that might be and the ones that aren't?
What we say is we watch for anyone who tries to break our safety rule. So if our safety rule, for example, is I don't keep secrets from my parents, and someone says, I want you to keep a secret from your parents, it doesn't matter how you know them. That's when the child needs to tell the parent, this person's trying to get me to keep a secret from you. And then the parent can do the additional sort of digging, because it's a kid's job to be a kid, and it's the parent's job to keep them safe. Does that make sense? So it's not how you know them, it's how they act.
Is there a specific religion that they're more, is it like Lutheran or Catholic or?
When it comes to parishioners, we have seen scandals in the LDS Church, in the Fundamentalist Baptist Church, in the Episcopal Church, in Methodist Church. I mean, we've seen it all over the place, and in different religions as well as in Christianity. When it comes to the actual people in charge of the congregations, we've seen more of it recently in Roman Catholic churches, but part of that is the structure of how that's different from other churches. But it's just another place to be aware, because sometimes people say, okay, I'm aware in my community, but when I'm going to put my guard down here. And just to be watching for those as well. So how we educate about internet safety changes the more that we learn. We respond to our gut instinct. If someone is making you feel scared or confused as an adult, we respond to that. We report online behavior. The website to do that is cybertipline.com or .org. You can just Google cybertipline. They take all the reports of kids being hurt online. We guard our emotional information online as well as our personal information. And that's the hard thing. When we're really mad, step away from the computer.
Boy, people post it all the time.
Whew! Adults too. Adults too. It's like, I can't believe you just put this online. Yeah, exactly. And so really watch the emotional behavior. The example I like to use with the kids is I used to keep a journal before the internet was invented in 9th grade, you know, again. And I kept this journal, and I found it when I was packing for college. There was this whole entry about how Heather had said this horrible thing to me in school, and I could never go back to the cafeteria again because everyone was going to laugh, and Heather has destroyed my life. I mean, I didn't have to look at a different school, and my whole life is over, and all this stuff. And I'm looking at it as I'm going to college, and not only do I not remember that day, I have no idea who Heather is. I have no idea who Heather is. You know, where in that moment I'm like, she has destroyed my life forever. 4 years later, no clue. If I would have had the internet and wrote, Heather's a horrible person and she's destroyed my life, and then someone else writes, and I can't believe Heather did that, and well, I created the I Hate Heather fan page. Well, I'm Heather's best friend. You need to back off. You're creating this online footprint for the whole world to see. And so when we're really upset or angry, we need to step away from the computer and write it down and not share it. And that's hard because our young people don't know the difference between public and private. That's a new thing. You know, it's like, I ate a ham and cheese sandwich, send. What? Why is that important? You know, I don't like malts. I like shakes better because malt powder makes me cough. Why is that? Why do we need to know? You know, but it is that sense about it's all over the place. So we have to think about, is this emotional information? Because that can be the cyberbullying feeding into that stuff. It's like having a pillow fight on a windy day. You know, and you go outside and you have a pillow fight on a windy day and the wind stops, and there's no way you can collect all the feathers. And the way that we talk about stuff online, once the wind stops, we can't take stuff back always. We can delete it and hope no one has taken a screenshot of it and, you know, hope that's there. We don't meet people from the internet without our parents' involvement. And we find our 5 adults we can ask questions about online safety. If it's we say 5 so that if it's one of the people on the list who's making us feel uncomfortable, we have 4 more. Or if the first person we tell can't help us, we have 4 more. We talk about the fact that once you click send, you can't take it back, so we have to go against our brain and stop and take breaths and think. We also can't unsee something. You know, it's like the junior high kids are like, oh, this tastes gross, come taste it. Or, oh, this smells gross, come smell it. And with the internet, it's like, oh, this is horrible, come look. And if something is being presented to us, we need to remember that once we've seen it, we can't unsee it. So we need to stop and think before, and that's hard, again, going against biology.
And it's a lot of it.
There's a lot of it. We're going to talk. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of young people and adults who need some cyber citizen, where I wish I could take away their internet driver's license. You know, for a little bit, I wish that it was like a car, where you could just take that internet driver's license away and be like, go back to class, take your driver's exam again. Once you've got your behind the wheel and you're back to using the internet appropriately, here's your driver's license. I wish we could do that. Electronic communication is not anonymous, and a lot of young people don't get the fact that their cell phone is a computer. When we click send, it's not anonymous. It can be traced back to us. And even if we delete it on our phone, you know, our server keeps a record of that. Young people are amazed when I tell them that. You know, it's like with Snapchat, the app where you take a picture and send it to someone and they see it for 5 seconds, then it gets erased. And I'll say, well, you know, Snapchat has those pictures on their server. And if you're using the feature illegally, they can send law enforcement, I think it's like the 30, the 40, the 50, whatever it is, most recent pictures that you've sent. Like, what? I thought once I send it, it's gone. It's really gone. It's like, no, that's not how it works. We're creating an online footprint. And so we want to be careful using the internet when we're angry or upset. And we don't want to talk about sex online. We want to save our questions about sex for one of our 5 adults, because that's the other trap offenders use, is trying to get young people to talk about sex. What have you always wanted to know? How far have you gone? What questions do you have about sex? And then the young person discloses all this stuff. They say, well, if you don't meet me, I'm going to tell everyone you've said this. I'm going to tell everyone you're interested in this. And the young person feels sort of blackmailed by that because it's all this stuff they don't want their parents to know. And so we just say, we don't talk about sex online. We don't send stuff about sex. We don't write stuff about sex. That's for in-person questions. That's not for the internet. And if we're using the internet to hurt someone else's feelings, we're creating a footprint of a cyberbully. Now, the internet itself isn't bad, just like I said at the beginning. The internet can open doors or it can close doors to us when we create this online footprint. You know, the example I use with the junior high kids is I say, pretend that you are in charge of a college basketball program and you have one scholarship. And you have to decide who's going to get it. You're going to Google those names. You're going to look at that footage of them playing, but you're also going to look at Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and Instagram, whatever you can get, to see who's going to be investment of your school's money. And even just looking at a profile picture, if you see a profile picture of a guy playing basketball in the front yard, or you see a profile picture of a guy on a pool table with his shirt off and his tongue out, who are you going to want to pay to come and look at your college? And the kids are like, this one. Okay. Because this one doesn't know how to use the internet right. Okay. And they're like, that could be embarrassing for my college if I'm in charge of the basketball program. I'm like, okay, great. Let's talk more about that. So we realize that the internet can open doors to us. It can get us that ticket in and that interview, or it can close doors to us. You know, I hire for a summer camp. I Google people's names before I bring them in for the interview if I trust them with kids. And so young people need to know, it's like, why am I not getting any job interviews? Have you Googled your name lately? You know, if you're 16 or 17. There's a great book called Protecting the Gift that talks about personal safety. And it talks about the fact that parents need to listen to their own gut instinct. If someone is giving you a gut instinct you're not feeling, don't let your child be alone with them. And the same parenting skills for years and years work online too. You know, just like we engage, we know what sites our kids like to spend time in, just like we know whose friends' houses they like to go to. You know, we can check the history, we can have our child give us an online tour, but say, where do you like to go online? Where do you spend your time? The empathy piece, teaching kids that even if you can't see the person's face, that they still have feelings. And that if we're using the internet to hurt somebody, we need to back off from the internet for a while and take a break. Kids who've been taught to walk a mile in someone else's shoes are going to be less likely to steal those shoes. You know, and that's the big piece that we see with the internet. It's like, I have high school kids who get in an argument with each other, and they will sit in the same room texting back and forth to resolve the argument instead of having a face-to-face apology. It's safer, you know? And it's, even parents do that nowadays. It's like, oh, I have this crutch that's going to prevent, and I say, it's hard, but if we're mad at somebody, have you ever had the internet help make it better? No, it takes that sitting down and that talking, which is hard to do and it's uncomfortable and we resist it, but that's what real friendship is built on. It's built on moving past that discomfort. And so the empathy piece is huge. And the last one is consequences. Consequences for the little things before it becomes a big thing. You know, we had a case of a young woman who was taking pictures of herself in her sports bra and sending it to guys at the school to be fun and flirtatious. And the principal saw it and called her in and said, we need to talk about your online footprint. And her mom got really upset and said, well, she's in her sports bra. That isn't a big deal. You see worse stuff on TV and on the billboards. Why are you calling her in or having this conversation? And it's like, we're trying to deal with the fact that she's doing this while she's wearing her sports bra so that 2 weeks from now it doesn't get worse. You know, and the consequences for the little things are important. My mom used to tell my brothers and I growing up, every night I pray if you get in trouble, you get caught and punished right away. Like, that's the worst prayer ever. What are you doing? But her thing was, if you get caught doing something small and the technology is, it wasn't technology then, it was like stealing a candy bar, you have to go and apologize. You're not going to grow up and steal a car. And if you're hurting someone with the cell phone, if you're hurting someone with the internet, and that gets caught when it's small, and we talk about feelings and empathy, and even though we don't see their face, they still have feelings, we can help prevent. And bullying isn't new. There's always been bullying. Verbal bullying, physical bullying, the relational bullying, where it's like, we can all hang out except you. We're all going to go to this party except you. That's always been there. The difference is you can get away from that. If you're being physically bullied when you're on the playground, when you're not on the playground, you're in a safe space. You know, if you're being verbally bullied at your scout troop or whatever it is, when you're not at the scout troop, you're fine. You have that buffer. And I'm not saying scouting or verbally bullying. I was just trying to think of an example. The difficult thing with cyberbullying is it's always in front of you. It's in your pocket, it's on your cell phone, it's in front of you, and it feels very, very sort of in your face. And about half of the youth say they've been cyberbullied within the last year, and it's most prevalent among 15 and 16-year-old girls. The other thing with cyberbullying is it's really hard to guess the target. When it comes to in-person bullying, I can spend 5 minutes at a playground and be like, this child is going to be the one that gets picked on. And you can usually figure out who the outlier is and who the person is that has different clothes or different dreams or what different talks a different way, acts a different way, whatever it is that's going to be picked on. With cyberbullying, it can be the most popular kid in school who someone feels upset about. It could be a kid who just rolled their eyes at someone who then it becomes this, online fire. It could be someone who they feel challenged because a certain boy likes them and not me or whatever else. It's really hard to figure out who targets are for cyberbullying. And it's pretty much 1 out of every 2 have had it happen to them within the last year. So it is what bullies see as an easy way to respond. And so the way that we talk about prevention is any cyberbullying case has 3 different groups. It has the people who are acting out, has the targets, and it has the bystanders. And we need to not just spend time with the targets and the person acting out. The power is in the bystander. Even if it's just the bystanders, if Joey keeps saying mean things about Susie on the internet, and Megan, who has nothing to do with it, says, Susie, just so you know, not everyone agrees with Joey online, or anonymous Columbia Heights student XXI. No one, I think that you're great. Let's sit down and have lunch together. Or even just sending a private email to the target saying, I can't believe this bad stuff is being said about you online. Just so you know, not everyone believes that. You don't have to deal with the person acting out directly, but bystanders offering support to targets is so important. But we call it bystanders into upstanders. And with young people, we say, get 2 or 3 people together and sit with that person at lunch. Get 2 or 3 people together and go and do something that has nothing to do with the internet. Go to a water park or spend time camping so that that person is centered in the fact that people like them. And that is where our power is the bystander, because that is where prevention begins. The good news is only 1 in 4 teenagers, when they see someone being mean online, only 1 in 5 will join in. 4 out of 5, when they see someone being mean online, don't join in. So what we're trying to do is get to those 4 out of 5 and say, how can we help the target? Can we get an adult involved if they're being hurt so that we can advocate for them? Can we send them a private message of support? What can we do if we have nothing to do with it with a group of 3 or 4 to help? And the story that I use with the students I like so much actually happened at a school in Canada with 2 boys who are seniors. And they went to their first day of school their senior year, and a 9th grade boy got bullied and teased because he was wearing pink by other 9th graders. And the seniors were really upset. They had created a school where people could be what they want to be and feel safe. And the fact that the 9th grader was being bullied by his peers for the color shirt he wore, they just thought was ridiculous. So they went home, they made some phone calls, they went to Ragstock, they went online, and the second day of school, all the seniors showed up wearing pink. So think of that 9th grader who the day before felt like he was scared and wasn't safe, and he comes the next day and all the seniors are in pink. Think of the people who were targeting, that were acting out. And they come to the next day of school and they see this isn't a place where they can get away with that. It's not about always working with the target and working with the person acting out. It's about engaging the other students to help. And this wasn't done by teachers. This was done by 2 senior guys. One of the other stories that I like a lot is from ESPN. A young girl with Down syndrome was being bullied in her school and in 9th grade, I think 9th grade, and wasn't telling her mom who was doing it. And so her mom called someone she knew who was a senior who volunteered with Special Olympics and said, listen, my daughter, I don't know if it's pronounced Chai or Chi, but Chai is being bullied. She won't tell me who it is. Can you just keep an eye and let me know? She says it's happening when she's switching class to class. If you could just keep an eye on her when she's switching and just let me know who it is. I can meet with the principal. We can put a stop to this. I need to know. And this guy was like, well, let me see what I can do. And what he did instead, because he thought if he just said the name of who it was that it would continue, he just connected with the football team and said, okay, who's going to walk her from math to science? Who's going to pick her up in science and walk her from science to spelling? who's going to pick her up at spelling and get her from spelling to lunch. And they just, each of them took different shifts in getting her to her next class. And when the ESPN reporter showed up at the school, he saw that she was actually sitting with the football team having lunch. Those were her friends. Those were her buddies, you know? And he said, well, what are you going to do when this guy graduates next year? And he's like, oh, I have a brother who's a sophomore. He's already making a schedule. We're going to be fine, you know? And this is what we're trying to harness. It's about the kids who do feel comfortable in who they are and feel confident in themselves, getting 3 or 4 people together and saying, this isn't okay. Let's get other adults involved. Let's do something to help that person being targeted. So if you're targeted by a cyberbully, the first thing to do is ask for help. This shouldn't be something a kid has to do alone. Talk about your feelings. Don't let them get all bottled up in there. We don't respond to the messages. That just then feeds the fire. We block people who are bothering us. One of the big internet rules is you don't feed the trolls. There are a lot of trolls who hang out on like CNN.com or FoxNews.com or even Star Tribune. And there's a story up that's like a public interest story about a puppy, and they'll be like, I bet that puppy, like you don't even know why they're home at 3 p.m. trying to make everyone hate life, but that's what they do. And we talk to the young people about not feeding the trolls, you know, and in the same sense as we talked about before, if we don't talk about sex on the internet, if someone is in a chat room at 3:30 wanting to talk to us about sex, that's not who you want to get your information from, you know? And it's the same thing. If someone is trying to rile you up online, block them and report them. And a lot of young people say, oh, I just block, but I don't report. And it's like, well, take the extra step of reporting. On any website has a report button for people who are misusing that website, because the next kid might not know how to block them. And we don't give up, because all online problems have real-life solutions. No problem online can't be solved. And we talk about that. All these problems have solutions. So if you're feeling harassed, if you're feeling like you're being victimized, let's get you surrounded with good people, because all these problems have solutions. And if your friend is targeted, we get a trusted adult involved, and we reach out in person to our friend. I mean, feeling alone and isolated is one of the worst parts about being targeted. And it depends on your personality type. Some kids see cyberbullying and they laugh it off. Other kids, they could have 15 nice things about them, and they're going to obsess about the one person who's a not nice person. I'm being videotaped. I need to not use, but yes. So it depends, but to say, to spend time in person with your friend offline can really help keep things in perspective. And we know that our small choices online can lead to big patterns. We don't get to control our reputation. And that's a hard thing for young people to learn. We don't control our reputation, but we do control our character. Our reputation is what people think about us, and our character is who we are. And like my best friend in high school is super shy, and she had a reputation of being not nice because she was shy. She came across being stuck up. She couldn't control her reputation. She just could control the choices she made and who she was, and eventually her reputation, her character matched up. We can't spend our time running after our reputation in junior high and high school, because it depends who's saying what on what day. And we have to focus on our character, about who we are when no one's looking, and be okay in that. And that's hard. I mean, even a simple app like Instagram that just takes a picture of yourself that you share. If you take a picture of yourself in your first day outfit and you get 3 thumbs up, you're like, wow, I look pretty good. And if the next kid takes a picture of themselves on the first day of school and gets 15 likes, it's like, oh, their reputation, they are liked 15 times more than I am. I look at the pictures of myself in junior high. I'm so glad I didn't have the ability to be like, what do you guys think of me today? You know, look at my red shoes with my purple pants. But it is hard when online world is so focused on reputation. So that's one of those parenting things to talk about and to process and to say, yeah, let's go back. Yes, you're being called this name, but we know your character. This is what your character is. And letting your child follow passions that have nothing to do with the internet, you know, whether it's skiing, whether it's tennis, whether it's singing, so that they can feel successful doing what it is they love to do, that can be a huge buffer for some of this behavior. Be aware with cell phones that there is a lot of pressure to post sexual pictures of yourself. And so we need to talk about the fact that with our bodies, no is a complete sentence. Well, look at they're pressured to send or post sexual content. It might not be of themselves, but sending or posting, you know, oh, someone sent you that picture, send it to me too, you know. I had an 8th grader who said, well, my 10th grade boyfriend wants me to send a picture of myself without my shirt on. And it's like, oh goodness, you know, and she said, the first time I said no, because my dad pays my phone bill and he'll see that picture and I'll lose my phone. And my boyfriend said, well, as soon as you send it, just delete it so it's not there anymore. She said, well, then I said, I don't want to send it because my best friend did that and the guy she sent it to showed it to everyone on the swim team. Well, don't you trust me? I'm just going to look at it and delete it. We have a trusting relationship. Don't you trust me? And she's like, I'm running out of ways to say no. And so that's when we get to the fact that when we're talking about our body, we don't need to say the word because after the word no. Once we've set a boundary and we've said, nope, that's as far as we're going, we don't need a because. And that's hard when you're in 8th grade and you think this 10th grade guy is the best ever and this is the relationship of your life. But it goes back to the old advice, not old advice, the advice about any person you're spending time with you want to be bragging about more than you're apologizing for. And if you find that a person you're spending time with you're apologizing for more than you're bragging about them, it's probably time to evaluate that friendship or that relationship, because there is a lot of pushing back and forth in these years. We also need to teach young men and young women to listen for the word no and to stop. It's not just about saying the word no. It's about, is there an enthusiastic yes? You know, we talk about enthusiastic consent. It's not just about waiting to say if they're going to say yes or no, but is this partner really enthusiastic about whatever it is that you're suggesting to do? When we talk about these images that are being sent out, 1 in 10 children has used their cell phone to do this, and about 1 in 100 of those pictures have actually been graphic enough to violate the law. And so that's why we talk about that whole, if you're doing it in your sports bra, let's have a conversation then versus down the road. You know, if a lot of your pictures are looking very risque online, what doors might that close to me? What doors might that open to me? Do I want to see these pictures when I'm 30? You know, and that's, again, the part of their brain that isn't done yet. So it's, you know, and where are they getting the idea? I don't know if you can see this image, but this guy says, hey, it's JD, here's another pic. You got any more pics of yourself? And a guy takes a picture of his chest and says, I think you have the wrong number. But it's just that idea about a lot of this is happening with adults that they're then copying. You know, we have adult sexting scandals, our politicians, our athletes, we've seen it happen. There are a lot of sexual images out there in the world. How do you get attention in the year 2013? How do you get your own reality show? You know, it's by having a sex tape. It's by having a scandal. And so part of this is helping them dissect the media. And one of the other big things is that most kids are seeing porn in their adolescence. Do you know what the average age is for a boy to see porn in America? 11 and a half. Now, there is a spectrum of pornography. There's pornography with a plot that has consent and has, you know, something that, I don't know, there's that side of porn. I'm not going to go too much into yeah. And then there's a side of porn that's about debasement, it's about violent victimization, it's about making the other person look and feel really bad. And so what we talk about is the fact of, we don't want to watch images of people being hurt. And that's how we frame it. If we're watching images of somebody being hurt, that might make us feel like it's okay to hurt somebody else. So if someone shows you a picture on the internet or a video where someone's being hurt, I don't want you to watch that. Let me explain to you why. This person has a story, this person has a life, something bad might have happened to them. We want to make sure that we don't watch images of people being hurt. And that's a good way to frame it. You can figure out in your own family and how you want to have that conversation, but you want to talk about porn before they're 11 and a half, if that's the average age they're seeing it. I work with college students, and some of the college students say, my sex ed was pornography. My parents never sat down and bought the books about the body and bought books about sex. The way I learned about sex was watching porn. That worries me, that that's their only, you know, because the part of their brain that's hardwired to learn new things, and the part of their brain that's hardwired for addiction, if all they're seeing are those types of images, that can be really problematic. So to have those conversations before 11 and a half. And be aware when we're talking about sexting, it is, the reason that they're being pressured does have some gender dynamics. Boys don't cite being pressured by females as a reason. They tend to be pressured by their friends. But girls, more than half of the girls say the pressure from a guy is a reason why they make this choice. So that's why when we're talking about sexual abuse prevention, we want to get men and women involved in these conversations. Because if a male is talking to a female about what they deserve in a relationship and why we listen to the word no and things like that, that could have some extra power. If a male is hearing from a female about why this isn't an okay thing to do and why this is about respect, that could have more power. So anyone who says sexual abuse prevention is a woman's issue has no idea what they're talking about. We want to get all genders involved in these conversations to help deal with these dynamics. And we've talked about the fact that no is a complete sentence, but be aware that even if you forget to say no, you can still get help. A lot of young people feel like, oh, I forgot to say no when this happened, and now this happened online, and I don't know what to do. Because we freeze sometimes. It's not just about flight. It's about freeze. And so even if we have fallen into a trap, even if we were feeding the trolls, even if we sent someone a picture of ourselves that we shouldn't have sent, we can still get help. And to let them know it's never done. We can always still get help, even if you forgot to say no. And so we talked to the teenagers about why should we avoid this behavior of sexting. So that it's not just don't do this or you can get in trouble, because I have tons of stories of that. Of the 18-year-old who got a sexual picture of his 16-year-old girlfriend, and they got in a fight in the middle of the night, and he went into her email account and sent it to everyone in her email. So her grandma, teachers, everyone gets the sexual pictures of the 16-year-old. And he, in the state of Florida, gets arrested for manufacturing and producing child porn. And in Florida, he has to register his address as a sex offender. He has to go to sex offender counseling. He's on the registry. And his argument, I was 18, it was in the middle of the night, we got in a fight. You know, and so there are those stories of don't do it because this is what could happen. The law hasn't quite caught up with this behavior. We also need to talk about the fact that these pictures are used against younger children. Offenders will say, look at this 16-year-old and how happy and great she looks about showing off her body. Can you do this as a 6-year-old? You know, we talk about the respect and about how we care about our bodies and we don't want people to have those images. But it's really not just about don't do this, you'll get in trouble. It's about don't do this for issues of respect, so to have these conversations. We talk about the difference between telling and tattling. Tattling is when we say something to get someone into trouble, and telling is when we say something to give someone help. And when someone's being hurt, we always tell. So telling is very different from tattling. And so, as I said at the beginning, there are tons of positives about being online. You know, everything from school projects to being able to meet, create groups of shared interest. But we also know that there's a lot of negatives online. I am really glad the internet was not involved when I was doing my undergrad. It was like, when I finish this paper, I'm going to play a game of Free Cell to reward myself. And then I was getting my master's. It's like, when I finish this paper, I'm going to go online and see what's happening on Twitter. And then 3 hours later, I'm like, oh, I still have this to do. You know, it's very much, you can get sucked in. It can be an online popularity contest. You know, 3 people like my Instagram picture, 15 people like his. What's wrong with me? Those kinds of questions. Personal reputation, cyberbullying. A great website to know about is called Common Sense Media. They look at all the different social media tools that young people are using and they rate them. They say, here are the good things about this tool, here are the bad things about this tool, and here are questions you should ask your kid if they're using this tool. So, you know, anything from Tumblr, which is kind of like an online way of keeping a journal where you can grab quotes and YouTubes and things like that and just make them into a, and you can say, okay, so if you have a Tumblr, here's the good stuff about that, here's the bad stuff about that, and here's the questions I'd like to ask. The Common Sense Media has an article on their website right now about the 11 sites and apps that most kids are using. And it goes through these 11 and the positives and negatives for all of them. Snapchat is one to talk about just because there is a perception amongst young people that once you take a picture of yourself and send it and the other person sees it, it goes away. And it doesn't. It's on a server. Actually, the rights that they have to the Snapchat pictures, the terms of service, are actually worse than the Instagram and Facebook when it comes to the amount of ownership they have over those pictures. So to be aware that, yes, it might go away on your phone and their phone, but it's stored on a server, and those can be accessed by law enforcement if there's an issue. There's a form in our office that law enforcement fills out, signs, faxes it in, then they send all the Snapchat pictures. And other things, even just like, okay, well, I only see it for 5 seconds, but if I have a camera in my other hand, I can take a picture of it. You know, so to be thinking about some of the trends, and this website does go over all the 11. And you can Google any of the apps as they come out or search it on Common Sense. We've talked about this, that prevention requires many voices, and it requires the fact that bystanders are going to turn into upstanders. Our best prevention piece is caring adults. You know, have a family password where if your child needs a safe ride out of a situation where they're in over their head, they can call or text that family password and you come get them, no questions asked. Have a family safety night a couple nights a year where you go over what are my expectations for your cell phone, what are my expectations for your internet, so that they know what the family rules are if someone's pushing against it. And one of our handouts over there is how to do a family safety night. Do what-if games before you're in the situation. What if someone sends you an email asking you to meet in real life? What if someone wants to talk to you about sex on 3 p.m. in a chat room? What if, and teenagers say they like to do what-ifs in the car because their parents don't make eye contact with them, and sometimes it feels like they're bearing into your soul. Like, what if you're at a party and someone offers you marijuana? And they're like, who are you talking to? What's good? You know, what do you know? It's that like back and forth versus, you know, driving where you're both looking the same way. And it's like, what if you're at a party and someone offers you marijuana? Well, well, here's what I would want you to do just so you know. And you have those conversations before they're in the situation. And so, and then parents like talk about it in the car because their kids can't bail out of a moving vehicle. So then you can have the conversation regardless of awkwardness. And so we want to empower young people to use the internet safely. And so here are some examples of what ifs, and we have what ifs on the side there. And so we have to know that things that we post don't remain private. We want to protect our future opportunities. So it's about talking about internet safety like you're creating a footprint and what that looks like. One other website is the Connect Safely Guide. It talks about social media and how to use it safely, and they have great activities for parents and young people. The other one is called Net Smarts, and you can Google that. It's Net Smarts, but with a Z, and they have activities for parents, kids, preteens, and teenagers. And so there's tons of different, and they're all on our website to look at. And the last thing is we keep track of Bystander Heroes, as I said in the middle of our presentation, about people who help out. My favorite story, you can see burglar with a question mark. There's a 17 and 18-year-old boy who had left school for the day to spend a day at a cul-de-sac where everyone was at work and steal all their electronics. So they brought all the electronics from this cul-de-sac, broken house to house to house, brought them home, and they're looking through the laptops they had stolen, and one of the laptops had hundreds of images of child porn on it. And the CNN article says that the 18-year-old called his mom and said, "What do I do?" And the mom said, "You need to call police." Now, I'd have loved to be the dispatch operator on the other end of that phone when you get the call from this, well, here's the deal. I was stealing stuff all day with my buddy here, and one of the laptops that we have that you really need to see this, and we're willing to have whatever happens to us happen as long as you can protect these kids and keep these kids safe. And law enforcement got the images, went and made an arrest on that man who didn't have a criminal record prior, as most don't. And those kids were in a better, safer place. And if burglars have enough common sense to report on behalf of kids, what's our excuse? You know, Dr. King said our lives begin to end on the day that we become silent about the things that matter. I believe kids matter. I always end with the little kids when I talk to them about what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, what dreams do we have so that we can go and create a safer world? And part of the kid who gets bullied is often the kid who has really big dreams. You know, it's the Bill Gateses of the world who get bullied. It's like, you really want to be their friend. Believe me, when they become a cajillionaire, you want to be on their good side. I don't know if cajillionaire is a real word, but I'm going with it. Probably isn't a real word as you interpret, but, you know, Bill Gates having a lot of money. You know, we want to be nice to the people who have really big dreams for a lot of reasons. And so I always ask the kids what they want to be when they grow up. We always have like the vet and the doctor and the rock star. But I had a little 5-year-old recently say, I want to grow up and be a fire truck. I'm like, that is what we are fighting for. We are fighting for her ability to be a fire truck. I don't know what that means, but we're going to fight for that. I had a little boy recently say, I want to be Horton from Dr. Seuss. And I'm like, oh, you're adorable. And so we want to be able to be aware that kids do have a voice and that we're stronger together. The first step to change about internet safety is to have the education, and the second step is action, to act, to share the websites, to give the information, to maybe send a private message to your adult friends saying, you know, when you're this angry, maybe you want to call me instead of putting it all up there for the whole world to see. And we need your voice for prevention. These are some of the resources that I talked about. National Center for Missing Children has great safety tips about internet safety. The Minnesota Internet Crimes Against Children, they handle all the complaints and all the cases of kids in Minnesota being victimized online. They're through the BCA. Demand the Change for Children is all the agencies in Minnesota working on prevention, sort of having a central hub. And then our website, JWRC. And then this is my contact information. One way that you can support our work is if you do have a Facebook, you can follow the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center. We just put up an article today about internet safety. We put up faces of missing children so that you can see those. Grab resources on the side, pass them out to other people, make them available. If you ever need a speaker or if you ever need more information, don't hesitate to call. We want to be a resource for you. So any questions? I am going to stay till everyone leaves in case you have a question you want to ask the whole group. But do you have any questions on your way as you're thinking?
When are you coming back?
When are you coming back? I don't know, whenever I'm asked. I was here last year during a horrible... I'll be back again. I was here last year under a horrible snowstorm. Last year I did teachable safety skills. I go into schools all the time when I'm invited. I don't think I've done Columbia Heights yet.
How come you can't invite her into our school?
You can. You could just ask principal or guidance counselor.
And I publicized this, it was in the news, it was in the Star Tribune. I just didn't think I should have brought my kids. I mean, and it's bad that it's the same
No,
time
it's-
as the college fair.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
It's like,
I put it on the calendar and then they put the college fair at the calendar. So,
Yeah.
you know, we don't always
right.
put it in
Yeah.
the communication piece, but I would never put it against the college fair.
Yeah.
You know
I
what
would have loved to have them. I was just saying to her, damn, I wish they would have been here and
Yeah.
not there.
I mean? Yeah, and I know,
Because I think
I
kids
say
get
enough about
and
Alice
basketball
presenting,
practice.
and last year was a huge snowstorm. We still had 8 to 10 people.
Yeah.
And the feedback I got was bring her back more and more, more and more. This is all huge stuff that affects all of us.
So why can't she go and speak like directly to like, you know, the 12th graders, 11th graders, 10th graders?
But I'm not.
I have to be invited by somebody from the school. So guidance counselor, principal, you can ask. I go to about 1 or 2 schools. I probably go to 1 school week. Like today I spoke 3 times. Yesterday I spoke once. I'm all over the place. But
So is
yeah.
there a fee related?
We request an honorarium donation of $250 for a day presentation, but we are very flexible with that. If it's we don't have the money, but we need the information, we'll just ebb and flow that scale as to what the school needs. So we want to get the information into the hands of the parents and the students in whatever way we can.
Kids need to know. I mean, you had me in tears a couple times. I mean, I had tears in my eyes.
I do too. I agree with you. You know, we'd have to go through.
And this is going to be on cable, right?
I think they'd be open to it. Yeah.
This is going to be on cable. It's being taped and it's going to go on cable TV. So you could say to your friends, well, you missed the event, but if you turn on to channel 13 at such and such a time, you know, the presentation will be up there because I'm all about getting the information out there.
I think it's
18, 13.
18.
Right. And that's, you know, many colleagues of mine have had Allison speak in ECFE all the way through.
Well, and the big thing with teenagers is not to condescend. I mean, that's the first thing that they notice if you go into a school and you're like, let's talk about your online footprint. They're going to be, oh my God. You know, but to meet them where they're at and to realize this is their first language. You know, adults were later adapters to technology. They have had this since day one. And so the way that they see it through their lens is very different. And to respect the fact, you know, we have teenager input on our education sessions so that we make sure that we are reaching them where they're at. It's not just the adult coming in and saying that, but we'll say, okay, what do you think? If your friend came to you with this question, how would you give them advice? How do you think we should frame this? You know, they're the ones who named the presentation, Protecting Your Online Footprint, because they said that cyberbullying and internet safety and all that stuff, it sounds like it's for little kids, but this sounds like it's important. You know, so we have teenagers involved in shaping it because we need their voice involved in prevention.
I mean, it should just be required in health class or, you know.
Well, in Anoka, Hennepin School District is now requiring it. That was the Star Tribune article that was we just put up on our Facebook today. that if you go to Anoka Hennepin, they teach it at 3 different grades. I want to say 6th. If you look on the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center today, the article's up there. But yeah, so they are, Anoka Hennepin is one of the few that does require it. But she came in at an hour-and-a-half interview, which I was impressed of.
Because she called me and I did an interview with her, and then I said, you really should talk to Alex.
Yeah.
Because she's the expert.
Right.
You know, I can bring her in, but I
Expert.
I know it's true.
Expert, yeah, I don't know.
I feel really strongly about this because our kids aren't getting this information.
Right.
And our parents aren't getting it.
Well, we always deal with it after something bad has happened.
Right.
We get the call on our hotline after someone's been bullied, after someone sent a sexual picture, after someone's been approached online. And we want to get this information. I mean, if the average age kids are seeing porn is at 11, we need to be talking about this stuff before 11,
Well, and
you know?
I think even, that's why our early childhood parents, they need the information because their kids are digital, or technology natives. I'm not. You think you didn't get technology till late. I'm way older than you. But, kids need this information and they need to know how to be safe and stay safe.
I remember my oldest, who's a senior, you let him on the computer just to play the online kids games.
Mhm.
And
There are
one
people lurking.
keyword,
Oh, yeah.
One misstep, and they're out there.
And our young people, I mean, it's funny, when I originally started doing internet safety sessions and talking about chat rooms, I mean, like, don't go in the chat rooms. And now young people are like, who goes into chat rooms? That sounds like the sketchiest thing ever. Like, the different things that they've stepped away from have changed, and they have adapted to what they see are the dangers, but young people don't always see the emotional information as being dangerous. So I'm going to wrap up to respect time. I want to thank you all for being here. Grab whatever you need on the side. If you can sign up for our mailing list, you can do an evaluation, grab any of the handouts, and I'll be here to answer questions as you're leaving.